After finally getting our hands on the high temperature precision fabricator and beginning the production of a lot of chips, in this episode we're finally gonna make our way towards the end of medium voltage and finally start producing stuff for high voltage. Welcome back everybody to the 15th episode in TerraFirmaGreg. As you can see here, I've got 4 bronze crates ready with all the stuff I want to make to start off this episode. And as you can see from the signs here, these crates respectively contain the stuff for a passive liquid silicon rubber line, the components for a passive silicon dust line, this stuff for a few more EBFs, and this stuff for some auto miners. This stuff is also present on the quest book, of course. The automatic mining is this optional quest over here, and I decided to wait for the advanced miners to start making these because we finally have a proper fuel source, and this machinery is far more efficient than its LV counterpart. Instead, the passive silicon and passive silicon rubber line are not present in this page, aside from the quest telling you to get the actual silicon rubber, and instead, as for the EBFs, the questbook tells you to get at least 2, but I decided to go a bit further and get the stuff to make 3 more. So we're gonna transform our single EBF into a quad. And the reason we're gonna want so many is because we're also gonna start production for Kanthal coils. But these things require so much processing, you have no idea how long this is gonna take. Each of these materials needs to be processed into the EBF, and we're also gonna need to cool this down in a chemical bath. And the actual cost of these materials is not gonna be too bad, but the fact that they all need to be processed at once means we're gonna need a far larger infrastructure piece to handle all of this. The first thing I want to do today is make more LV circuits as per this quest. As you can see, now that we've got some chips, we can start making integrated circuits, for which we still roughly need the same stuff for normal circuits, except for the fact that now we need diodes for the LV circuits, but the cost of everything else has somewhat been reduced, and the big step up for the circuits is gonna be getting double the amount of MV circuits. As you can see, the material cost is still roughly the same, but these are also mandatory to get our first HV circuits. We're gonna need annealed copper, electrum wire, transistors, which we still haven't made, the integrated MV circuits, and then a couple of chips. Here in our backpack, as you can see, I've also prepared a bunch of more stuff that we're gonna need, of which the first step is gonna be making the integrated LV circuits. So we can grab all of these, go here in our circuit assembler, and if I just insert 1 stack of each of these, we are gonna start producing our very first integrated LV circuits. After working all of this stuff into MV circuits, we're gonna have enough to make half a stack of advanced integrated circuits. But before that, we are gonna want to set up the passive silicon lines for both the rubber and the dust. So the first one is gonna be the passive silicon dust line, for which, as you can see here, we've got all the machinery, and now I can just craft everything into machines. And the first step to start producing silicon is gonna be producing cobblestone. As you can see here, I've now set up our rock crusher to start producing dacite cobblestone, feeding into the forge hammer, which is gonna crush it into gravel. We're gonna want to sift the gravel into flint, after which we're gonna want to macerate the flint into flint dust. And after centrifuging this, we're gonna get silicon dioxide, and if we electrolyze this, we're gonna get silicon, as well as oxygen. So that's basically gonna be the chain we're gonna want to follow. So I think the line should be sifter, into macerator, into centrifuge, into electrolyzer. Instead, for the gas turbine generators, we're gonna want 1 each for the electrolyzer and the centrifuge, and 1 for both the macerator and the sifter. Oh, by the way, since the last episode, I've upgraded the wood farm, and as you can see, I've kept the reformate line running for a few hours, and we've still got basically maxed out logs. But I had to kind of like cut off this side of the hill to expand it, but now this size is actually enough to feed our reformate line. So much so that I even had to go ahead and make an aluminium super tank, because our bronze tank here got fueled pretty quickly, and at the rate we were producing, since we still don't have many passive lines running off of this, I wanted at least 8,000 buckets more of storage. And getting these was actually not too bad. As you can see, this just requires some MV circuits alongside some aluminium, an electric pump, so this is all stuff you already know. The difference is in the hermetic casing, because it requires aluminium plates alongside a large polyvinyl chloride item pipe. which is crafted with polyvinyl chloride ingots, and this polyvinyl is made with vinyl chloride and oxygen. Vinyl chloride is instead made with ethylene and chlorine gas, and we've been producing chlorine for a while now. I just decided to do this off camera, since it wasn't anything too outstanding to show. But I just made enough to make this tank, and I think I have like some more ingots here. Yeah, I've got like 13 more, but we currently don't have a use for them. In the meantime here, we've got our first batch of LV circuits done, and now we can start off the second one. And now we just need to bring the gravel to our sifter. Okay, now we should be exporting all the gravel, and yeah, it's here now. And alright, now we've got it in the sifter, so we can now connect instead all the turbines to the reformat line. Okay, the system should be online, and now the sifter is sifting the gravel into flint. The macerator is macerating it into flint dust. The centrifuge is getting us the silicon dioxide, and the electrolyzer is getting us the silicon dust as well as the oxygen dust. So this means we can now get our silicon dust straight into the silicon production line, which I've also cut down to a single chemical reactor alongside a single electrolyzer, which is something I mentioned should be possible in the last episode, and I actually went ahead and tested this in creative and found out it's actually really easy. So now the whole system is online, and this oxygen here is gonna go somewhere. I'm not gonna waste it, of course, because our oxygen here is not enough to keep up with the demand from our plastic line. Okay, now this is actually working. This is starting to become kind of a mess, and this I think is the sign that we are finally starting to outgrow our factory here. But since we are also almost at the end of medium voltage, I am not gonna expand this factory further, because for high voltage I already have plans to make a whole new base, like entirely somewhere else far from here, for which we're also gonna need to update to the newest version, because that's gonna rework the world generation. Also, since everything is so loud here, someone told me that I can use the hammer to mute this machinery. Okay, yeah, this is so much more manageable. I know it's kind of against the spirit of a factory to not have the sound of every piece of machinery working at once, but I gotta say, I very much prefer the quiet. But regardless, we've now achieved our first objective of the day, making a passive silicon producing line, which is also probably the best oxygen producing line we've got. So now it's time to move on to the next step. We can move on to silicon rubber, which is basically gonna be the upgrade to our rubber, like normal. To make this, we're gonna need two things: sulfur dust and... yeah, no, I'm not gonna pronounce this. The sulfur dust we can easily get by electrolyzing the hydrogen sulfide we're currently producing to make plastic. Instead, whatever this is, I decided the best way to go about this for now is gonna be this recipe, which requires silicon dust, methanol, and hydrochloric acid. The silicon dust we are currently producing passively, as you know. The hydrochloric acid we can easily produce by simply mixing hydrogen and chlorine, and instead the methanol we're gonna distill from fermented biomass, which we can easily get from the fermenter and some biomass. And this is actually something I tried doing between the last episode and this one. I took the fermenter we made during the livestream to ferment food, and I decided to repurpose it here because currently I don't have any food to ferment. So this fermented biomass is gonna be distilled into methanol. Also, we can remove the crate for the passive silicon line and instead look into the one for the liquid rubber line. So now, if we grab all of this stuff, I guess we can place it here. We are really running out of space, huh? But alright, starting from the last piece, we're gonna have the chemical reactor, which is gonna react the sulfur alongside the rubber thing. Okay, I just noticed that to make the siloxane, we cannot use an LV reactor, so we need an MV one. But aside from that, we are gonna need an advanced distillery and an electrolyzer. So we are just missing the MV chemical reactor. Instead, for the power generation, it's very simply gonna be one turbine per machinery. Alright! I had forgotten that since we took off one chemical reactor from the silicon line, we actually already have one. So we can just craft another gas turbine generator. And this should be it for the power side. Now, the first thing is gonna be electrolyzing the hydrogen sulfide, which is being produced currently by this distillery. We are just gonna take it out from here. It's gonna go both beneath and into the other machine. So we can start off with connecting the reformat line as per usual, and then we can just bring the sulfide over to the electrolyzer. and we're gonna want to bring the output to the last chemical reactor. So that's the first half of this whole system done. And instead, the fermented biomass we are simply gonna get from the fermenter and into the distillery, which is then gonna output into the chemical reactor. So I should just be able to output this into the back here, for which we're gonna want circuit number 4. And I don't currently have a purpose for the fertilizer, so I'm just gonna output it into this crate here because I don't think we're gonna produce a lot of this. And instead, for the methanol, I just realized we also needed the last chemical reactor to make the hydrochloric acid. I think we can make a small modification, and instead of taking this hydrogen back to the tank, we could very simply bring it over to this chemical reactor so that we can start producing hydrochloric acid, and instead get the chlorine from this tank. Okay, yeah, this is probably a lot smarter, because now we can just get the chlorine from this side. We are just gonna bring it over here to this chemical reactor where it's gonna react with the methanol. And now we just need to bring some silicon dust as well, which we're simply gonna take from the passive line we just built. Alright, and now we just need to set circuit number 3. And alright, we've got our siloxane dust. I'm not gonna pronounce everything that comes before it, as well as some diluted hydrochloric acid, for which we could turn it back into hydrochloric acid or rhenium leachate. I don't know. So for now, we are just gonna store this into a super tank. So everything is now accounted for. Boom. And that also takes off the second system I wanted to do today. And also, the basic integrated circuits have now finished processing. So now, if we go back into our basic circuit assembler, we can grab all of this stuff for the medium voltage circuits, which should be something like this, right? The resistors. And we can start producing our integrated MV circuits. This is just something I'm gonna keep working in the background. And also this disgusting pipe here was just to get the soldering alloy into the extractor and then into the basic circuit assembler. But boom! Double the amount of MV circuits we were able to get before. So now, for the advanced integrated circuits, we are literally just missing the transistors. And for these, we are gonna need the liquid silicon rubber we just set up everything for, silicon plates, which come from silicon ingots, which need to be cooled down from hot silicon ingots, because these we are gonna produce by heating up silicon dust, which means it's finally time to work on our quad EBF. Okay, I think I just got a better idea on how to produce biomass, since we're gonna need a lot more of what we currently have. The big idea is gonna be to use the plant balls. These plant balls can be macerated into biochaff, and this biochaff can be brewed into biomass. And this gives us almost a bucket per biochaff. So this, aside from making the plant balls actually useful now, also probably solves the biomass production line. And to do this, we should be able to connect to the line that's currently bringing the logs. Okay, now that we have the macerator, we can very simply get it down, not like this. We can very simply place it right beside the crate, and if we change the item filter to only allow plant balls inside, we can simply add a conveyor module to the back, give it the filter, and set it to import. So this is gonna start macerating the plant balls. And now if we just connect this to the log line, okay, but no, this is the log line, and I actually need to connect this to the sapling line. Now we're getting some biochaff into the breweries. Although now I guess the distillery, or more precisely the fermenter, is the actual bottleneck. So I think that's something I'm gonna need to work on later. And aside from that, here we've got our very first batch of good electronic circuits ready. And now we can start off the second one. And instead, it's finally time to start preparing the other 3 EBFs. For which the first part is gonna be, of course, producing the coils. And you know what, I'm just gonna make another really bad connection here with the pipes, just so I don't need to do everything by hand. So this is now gonna start producing some coils for us. But for now, I just want to tear down our old DBF and set up the quad that we're gonna be using going forward. Okay, these should roughly be the size of the whole thing. Here in the middle, we are of course gonna have our coils. we can go ahead and make the 9 steam furnaces we need to make, for which I'm lacking quite a few black steel rods. And I've just tore down our old DBF, so... Okay, now we finally have everything we need for the furnaces, and therefore the electric blast furnaces. Now these should all go here in these spots, while in the corners we're gonna have the maintenance hatches, and then for the input and output hatches, we're gonna place them like this. And this also completes the front side, so we can grab our invar casing and fill in the rest. And instead for the back we can finally use our ULPIC chips to make the MV energy hatches. And yes, this means we are gonna run all 4 of these at HV power. So that's everything for the coils. Now we're also gonna need the muffler hatches like this. And the rest we can just fill in with invar. And now we just need to turn all of the EBFs in the right direction. And alright, this is now gonna be our new EBF. And for now, we don't have all the power we need to power this, because I've only prepared this stuff for 8 turbines, and I just realized we actually need 16. So, I'm also gonna go here and grab the last batch of our MV circuits, which means we've now got 2 stacks, and the first thing I'm gonna do with this is make the 8 turbines we need. So now it's just a matter of piping everything and cabling everything we need. The 4 times copper-nickel cable should be enough to power all of these, because that would require way too many turbines, and now everything should be online. So if we now go and grab some nitrogen, we should be able to get this to work. Why did only that side lit up? Okay, now it's working. Not sure what happened, but we are now producing aluminium, and we're also doing it at quadruple the speed, because since we're now running these EBFs at HV instead of MV, the recipe is taking half the time for 4 times the energy cost. And now we are just missing the remaining 8 turbines to power everything else. But after all of this crafting, we are also finally out of resources, which is luckily what you can see from the last crate, the next objective of today's episode, because this crate here contains the stuff needed to craft some autominers. Starting with the receivers, or the emitters, I forgot the name. Sensors. Okay, starting with the sensors, we can use this to go and craft 3 autominers, and here I've got this stuff for 5 more turbines, but realistically we're only gonna need 3 for this. But basically, what I'm gonna do with this is, when I find a vein, I'm gonna have this miner output its stuff into some crates, and I want to try seeing if 1 aluminum drum of reformate is enough to get a whole vein. Otherwise, we're gonna use some super tanks. And this basically means I no longer need to go mining by hand, which technically is less of a problem now that we have a drill, but the beneath is still the beneath, and cave-ins are still a real pain to deal with, so this thing is gonna be a massive update to our quality of life. So let's go set some up. And the first vein I want to set an autominer at is gonna be the iron vein, the massive one we found over here. And here, as you can see, we had reached the bottom of this vein. So, in theory, this should be roughly the center of the vein, although it's slightly more over there, but we can place the miner here, and this has a working area of 33 by 33 blocks, and I think it has unlimited vertical range, so we shouldn't need to start from a cave. I'm gonna test that with the next miner, but since we're down here now, let's set up an aluminium drum for this one, and a pipe to point into 2 crates. And I think if I just do this, and set the output, of course, yeah, This is now working and mining the vein. Alright. I don't think this is using a lot. So now we should just be able to go here, force load these chunks. And in a few days, we're just gonna come back here and collect what it has produced. I missed the ladder. Instead, the next vein is gonna be an iron and ruby vein. This is gonna net us a whole bunch of ruby, so that's gonna be a whole lot of aluminium. And I think we can roughly set it up here. And for this one, we're gonna try using the super tank instead of the drum. And the last vein is gonna be yet another ruby vein. This is basically gonna set us up for the foreseeable future, both in terms of steel and aluminium, especially now that we've got a quad EBF running all of this. And this is basically gonna be how I mine from now on. After these auto miners are done, I'm most likely gonna start mining some copper, tin, and then basically every other material we're gonna need going forward. And this was basically everything I wanted to do for this first part of this episode. To close this off, I think I want to get stainless steel and our first HV machine hull, as well as our first HV circuits, and make an advanced circuit assembler, which is gonna be our first HV machine. The silicon rubber is finally starting to produce, so that only leaves the silicon plates, which we can very simply make with silicon ingots. And silicon ingots, we need to cool down. And silicon ingots we can simply cook into the EBF with silicon dust. This is no problem. In fact, we can already start producing this. The real challenge is gonna be cooling this down, for which we're gonna need an advanced chemical bath. And to make this chemical bath, this was one of the machines I wanted to make at the start of MV, but I saw that we needed a plastic pipe, which is something we can now do now that we have liquid polyethylene. And to make this, we are just gonna make an extruder mold, which is plain simple. And now, if we grab an ingot mold and some liquid plastic, we can start making some plastic ingots and start extruding them into pipes. In the meantime, we can already start cooking a single stack of silicon dust, although they require circuit number 1. Okay, never mind, we cannot make silicon ingots yet. We need Kanthal coils for this. This throws quite a wrench into my plans, because Kanthal coils were supposed to be a long-term project for me, because the whole process to get all of this stuff is gonna take forever. So let's backtrack a little, and instead move on to make stainless steel, because this is something much easier to make. As you can see, 9 pieces of stainless steel dust require 1 part manganese, 3 parts invar, 4 parts iron, and 1 part chromium. So we can just get everything in the mixer and get our first few pieces of stainless steel dust. So these we should be able to cook into the EBF. And yeah, if we use nitrogen, we're gonna get a better recipe. And in the meantime here, I've prepared what we need for the chemical bath. And for now, this is just gonna sit here, as well as the stuff for a wire mill, which is gonna replace the create one. And I think for the Kanthal coils, what I'm gonna want to do is gonna be making a 5th EBF, because if I were to replace one of these with Kanthal coils, I don't think it would count, because I think all the coils of a single EBF need to be the same for it to work. Although before that, I think it's time we finally tackle the Kanthal coils. These are gonna be probably the most annoying block to make so far, and the reason is all of these, aside from the liquid cobalt, are materials that require a multi-step process that takes literal hours to finish. Let's start with the silicon carbide ingots, SiCs for short. The SiCs are made with rough silicon carbide dust and hydrochloric acid. The acid is no problem, so what's up with the rough silicon carbide dust? This thing is macerated from the rough silicon carbide ingot, which is one of those ingots that needs to be cooled down. The actual ingots are made in a blast furnace, using graphite dust and exquisite quartz. As you can see, the higher quality the quartz is, the more carbide ingots per graphite dust we get. The highest quality nets us 9 ingots per 27 graphite, the lower quality nets us 5 for 9 and 27, and the normal quartz just gives us 1, so we are gonna want to avoid this as much as possible. And this process is gonna take so long, we might as well start making it right now. We do have a bunch of graphite, that's not really the problem, neither is the quartz, because as you can see here, I've got 53 exquisite quartz, so those are all gonna turn into carbide ingots 1 to 1, And I think these also want some fluid outputs. So I guess we can just place them underneath and above. But the reason these are not firing is because there aren't enough fluid outputs. Okay, wait, I think I realized what's going on. And I think the reason is that this recipe is gonna produce 18 buckets of carbon monoxide, and the LV output hatches can only handle 16. And the LV output hatches can only handle 16 buckets. Yeah, exactly. Now this is still not gonna be enough. So let's immediately get a drum. And now this is gonna take 50 seconds to produce. And mind you, this is overclocked, because at MV this would take 100 seconds. But here they are, our first 9 hot rough silicon carbide ingots. Now we just need to take this into the chemical bath, and with some distilled water, which is gonna make it take less time, we're gonna be able to cool this down into normal ingots. And of these, we're just gonna need 16 to make all the Kanthal coils we need. Here they are. And here I've now started running the recipe with flawless quartz, and we also lost a bunch of ingots because I accidentally ran both recipes basically at the same time, and this output was not able to handle both outputs simultaneously, so we lost a batch or two, I think. And then, once we get our rough silicon carbide ingots, we can just crush them, and finally react them with hydrochloric acid. And boom! That's our first silicon carbide ingot. Now, for the other two materials. Kanthal also comes from a hot ingot, and Kanthal dust is really easy to make. We're just gonna need chromium, aluminium and iron dust. And of these, we are gonna need 128 ingots. The process is not that bad. Also, in the meantime, we can also start making stainless steel plates, and with these we can make, of course, a stainless steel machine casing. And to turn this into a hull, we're gonna need liquid plastic and gold cables. And this part is the same as usual. Here is our first HV machine hull. Going forward, all machinery is gonna start to look like this. We are slowly getting more and more futuristic as time goes on. In the meantime, here we've got our first hot Kanthal ingots, which we're gonna need to cool down the same way as the SiCs. And here it is. With this Kanthal we're gonna need to make 2 times wires, so the wire mill is gonna help us with that. This only leaves the last piece we need for the Kanthal coils, which is gonna be the René 41 ingots. These, as per usual, come from cooling down the hot version, and instead the dust is once again mixed the same way we did with Kanthal, but this time with a lot more materials. That being 1 part aluminium, 1 part boron, 2 part cobalt, 3 parts chromium, 1 part molybdenum, and 5 part nickel, to get in total 14 pieces of René dust, of which we are just gonna need 64 ingots, so it's not actually that much. So once again, we can just come to the mixer, throw in all the dusts we need to mix. Oh, we also need carbon monoxide, which is the output you get from making SiCs, so that's a good loop right there. And we can start making René dust, which apparently is gonna take forever. 92 seconds. Yeah, you see the problem with this? This process is gonna be the same as the Kanthal and the SiC's cooling, so I'm not even gonna show you that. But the real problem with this whole process is that it's gonna take so long of just waiting around that realistically I'm not gonna have it done for this episode. And since this is the gateway to the HV circuits, for today this is as much as we're able to do. We didn't progress as much as the last episode, but we got a passive silicon and passive silicon rubber line, we got our first few pieces of stainless steel, and we have started preparing the stuff we need for the Kanthal coils, which are gonna open up the way to the HV circuits. We've also set up the auto miners, which are finally gonna solve our aluminium shortage as well as anything else shortage, because even as we speak, those miners are doing all the work I was supposed to be doing, so they ramp up the efficiency even further. So I just think I'm going to record the process of making the Kanthal coils while I make them, and they're gonna be ready for the next episode. So for this episode instead, it's gonna be all. As per usual, if you liked it, leave a like, a comment and subscribe. A massive thank you to our channel members:
Josnik, Cycle, Inkling, Marcus Jeanette, Zordrip, Noon Movies, Duped, Devon Schonholz, Pitblade, Andrew Podalieniec, Cryonix, Warflows, Planesdroplus, Jetzicato, Costas, and Ikari29.
And until the next one, see ya!